tuned in to Frankyrose's Crime Updates. You are now tuned in to Frankyrose's Crime Updates.
Let's switch to suspense. Let's switch to suspense.
You are now tuned in to Frankyrose's Crime Updates. Crime Updates. Crime Updates. You are now tuned in to Frankyrose's Crime Updates. Crime Updates.
Good day. I'm Frankyrose. Welcome to my channel. I'm a true crime junkie, and what we're about to discuss, watch, and listen to is just my own personal opinion, and you should always do your own research. Everything that we discuss is public knowledge, and we are just basically discussing my point of view. I am the furthest thing from a professional. This is all available on an easy Google search. So now that I have covered my butt, let's chat. Today, I want to talk about serial killer Ivan Robert Marco Milat, who was born on December 27, 1944, in Guildford, New South Wales, in the land of kangaroos and koala bears. Australia. Now, when I think of Australia, I think awesome beaches and summer tans. But that is the exact opposite of what we're going to be talking about. Today, we're going to first start back in 1989 through to 1992, when 7 backpackers went missing and were found in Australia's beautiful Belangelo State Forest between September 1992 and November 1993. Then, in 1996, an Australian man named Ivan Milat was convicted of all 7 murders, as well as a bunch of other charges. The serial killings started to be known as the Backpack Murders, or him as the Backpack Killer. And Ivan was also known to many by the name of Bill. So all of the 7 victims were found in shallow graves in the Belangelo State Forest. Ivan Milat died of cancer at the age of 74. He died while he was still in the Huskow. And these were all due to the convictions in 1996. So the 7 victims were aged 19 to 22, and they all disappeared when they were hitchhiking just outside of Sydney. But Ivan's death now means that his suspected involvement in a bunch of other disappearances might never be solved. Ivan Milat and the brutality of his crimes have ruined the peacefulness of Belangelo Forest, and now to many it's now become known for terror. The vicious killings were done by a good-looking, tanned, muscular guy. It was a total surprise to everyone who knew him, and many to this day still believe Ivan was innocent. But with that said, I still wonder if Ivan didn't, I don't know if he did this on his own. Maybe he had the help of one of his brothers. I mean, that's what some out there they're saying about this. And there's one brother that maybe I could see. So Ivan was one of 6 prime suspects in the cases of 3 women, Robin Hickey, Amanda Robinson, and Leanne Goodall. All of them went missing close to Newcastle, which is north of Sydney. This happens to be very close to where Ivan was working at the time as a road worker. These attacks all happened within 4 months of each other, between 1978 and 1979. There is a possibility that Ivan Milat did not act alone, and this has been speculated on for all of these years. During his trial, Ivan's lawyer tried to blame one of his brothers, and police did investigate the possibility that he might have had an accomplice. Justice David Hunt said it was clear to him that at least 2 of the killings, 2 people had to have been involved. He always believed that to be the case. So, was one of his brothers involved? I don't know. In my mind, there's a really good possibility. Ivan Milat was the 5th of 14 siblings and one of 10 brothers. That is one hell of a large family. They were known to be feisty and many times not up to much good. Most were very well known to the cops. Ivan's dad, Stephen Marco, who started going by the name Stephen Milat and started working on the harbor in Sydney soon after he migrated from Croatia after the First World War. And his mother, Margaret Elizabeth Piddleston, took care of the home and all of those kids. She married Ivan's dad when she was 16 years old. Ivan's dad eventually started a tomato plantation on the family's property located in Moorebank, which is located in Western Sydney. Ivan did not stand out among his siblings, and as they got older, they started getting involved in small-time thefts and started doing B&Es as well as burglaries. It would have been a hectic house with all of those kids running around. Ivan was the 5th of 14. Oh my God, never. Many of the 10 Milat boys were well known to the local police, and Ivan Milat displayed antisocial behaviors at a young age, leading to a stint in a residential school when he was 13. By the age of 17, Ivan was in juvenile detention centers for theft. At age 19, he was involved in a shop break-in. He was sentenced to 18 months for break and enter. And a month after he was released, he was arrested for driving a stolen car and sentenced to 2 years hard labor. In September 1967, age 22, he was sentenced for 3 years for theft again. Ivan really seemed to enjoy that lifestyle. As he got older, he served longer stays in jail for a bunch of B&Es. Ivan seemed to love fast cars, not necessarily his own, but fast cars. He seems to have had kind of a quietness about him. Somehow he literally found a way to have affairs with 2 of his brother's girlfriends at the same time. Whoa! He's lucky he didn't get his butt kicked. In April 1971, he was charged with abduction of 2 18-year-old hitchhikers, one of whom he SA'd. While awaiting trial, he was involved in a string of robberies with some of his brothers before faking his own death and fleeing to New Zealand for a year. He was rearrested in 1974, but the robbery and kidnap cases both failed at trial with the help of their family lawyer, John Marsden. It was at that time, 1975, that Ivan Milat took a job as a truck driver. That's just what a person needs. Psychopath with big truck and long drives. Ivan liked to brag to his friends about his love of violence. He once described to a friend how to turn a person into a head on a stick by stabbing them in the spine. This is what happened to these young people. I do not believe that's a coincidence. If it is, it's a big one. Deborah Everest, 19 years old, and James Gibson, 19, both from Melbourne, left Sydney to go to Albury, close to the border of New South Wales, and Victoria for Confest near Albury on December 30th, 1989. They planned to meet up with friends, but they never made it. After neither one of them had made contact with their families in a couple of weeks, the families filed missing persons reports. And it was a similar routine for the other victims as well. Simone Schmidl was 21 years old from Germany. She left Sydney for Melbourne on January 20th, 1991. She was supposed to meet her mom at the airport in Melbourne 4 days later, and she was also a no-show. There is also Gabor Neugebauer, who was 21, and Anja Hapschied, who was 20. They were also German. They also left King's Cross Hostel in Sydney on December 26, 1991. They were supposed to be making a 4,000-kilometer trip to Darwin, and then they were supposed to be returning to Munich a month later, and they never made that plane ride. A 4,000-kilometer trip, that is a long way to stick your thumb out. Carolyn Clark, 21, from Surrey, and Joanne Walters, 22, were from Maesteg, I think it's pronounced, in Wales. They actually met at a backpackers hostel in Sydney, King's Cross area, and they shared, I don't know if it was an apartment or they were roommates for a while. In April of 1992, they left Sydney. They planned to go south towards Victoria or to Perth in Western Australia. And again, when weeks went by without any contact with their parents, both families realized something was wrong, and they contacted police in both the UK and Australia. In April of 1992, an Australian TV show followed Gabor Neugebauer's parents as they searched for their son and started pointing out the other missing backpackers in that area. It was in September 1992 when two runners found the first two bodies. It was Carolyn Clark, and they found Joanne Walters about 90 feet away. Joanne had been stabbed 21 times in the back and 14 times in the chest, and her spine had been severed by a nasty blow. Lying in the bush about 10 meters away was Carolyn Clark, and she had been shot 10 times in the head, as well as being blindfolded and stabbed in the chest. See, like, holy crap. what a monster. Like, what he was capable of is beyond my comprehension. This is another one of those times that you think you can judge a book by its cover. Yeah, no. To see pictures of Ivan when he was young, I think he looked friendly enough. Nah, wrong. Total sicko. I also wonder if he could have actually been able to attack these people on his own. That's still one of my biggest questions. Did anyone help Ivan? I don't know. What do you guys think? The nasty discoveries did not stop. It was a year later, on October 1993, that a man collecting firewood found another body, well, bones. This time it was James Gibson, and finding James Gibson's body in Belangelo puzzled the investigators because his camera and backpack had been found at Galston Gorge, which was like over 120 kilometers or 75 miles north. Then they found Deborah Everest close by. It was about a month later that the 3 German backpackers were found. The first one found was Simone Schmidl, who hadn't been seen since January 1991. Then Anja Hapschied and Gabor Neugebauer, who we know disappeared in December of 91. On the 1st of November 93, a skeleton was found in a clearing along a fire trail in the forest during a police sweep. It was later identified to be Simone Schmidl, but the clothing found at the scene was not Simone's. It matched another missing backpacker. And Anja, like, okay, not confusing, right? So on November 4th, 1993, the bodies of Anja and Gabor were then found on a nearby fire trail, also in shallow graves about 160 feet apart. The victims were all found face down with their arms behind their backs, hidden with leaves and branches on top of them. Many had been brutally stabbed or shot. One had actually been beheaded. Most of them showed signs of SA. There is no wonder why he is considered one of the worst serial killers to date. On November 5th, 1993, New South Wales government increased the reward in relation to the killings to $500,000. After developing their profile of the killer, the police faced an enormous volume of data and many sources. Investigators applied link analysis technology, and as a result, the list of suspects was narrowed from 230 to a shorter list of 32. Thirsty, sorry. So speculation did arise that there was more than one serial killer, being that most of the victims had been attacked in pairs, and many had been killed in different ways and buried separately. After a few very intense investigations, police were able to narrow down the suspects to a few dozen people, and it was a guy by the name of Paul Onions who was able to give the biggest evidence. On November 13th, 1993, police received a call from Paul Onions, who's 24, and in the UK. On January 25th, 1990, Paul Onions had been backpacking in Australia, and while hitchhiking from Liverpool Station towards Mildura, had accepted a ride south of Casula from a man only known as Bill. South of the town of Mittagong, and less than 1 kilometer from Belangelo State Forest, Bill stopped. He pulled out a revolver and some ropes and stated that this was a robbery. At that point, Paul Onions managed to bail. He got the hell out of there. Well, Bill was shooting at him. Sounds like he was like zigzagging, and yeah, he was able to stop someone finally, Joanne Barry of Canberra, and they went to the cops and were able to describe the assailant and his vehicle to all the police there. So on April 13th, 1994, when detectives refound the note regarding Paul Onions and his statement, they were also able to verify and corroborate by talking to Miss Barry, who stopped and rescued him. So Paul Onions flew to Australia from UK to give evidence against Ivan. He would be the most important person at the trial. Paul Onions literally was, I think, the only one that we know of that was able to get out of Ivan's ute in the early 90s. January 1990, 3 weeks after Deborah Everest and James Gibson disappeared, Paul Onions had hitched a ride to Canberra, and sadly he ended up with Ivan Milat. Like, what kind of luck is that? All the people out in this world, you're going, what is the chances of running into a creep like that? Not many. Not a great chance. But yeah, this poor guy, not a good day. So he started to get a little bit sketched out because the man, Bill, was asking if anyone knew where he was headed. Did he have any special forces training? Just kind of questions that would make anyone uncomfortable when you're being asked by a stranger in a confined space that's moving at a high rate of speed. I might have jumped out of the ute. So, yeah, as the car approached the Belangelo State Forest, Bill pulled to the side and said he wanted to find something, a cassette to play. Instead, he grabbed the gun and rope and then told Paul Onions, yeah, you're being robbed. So, yeah, he made a run for it. And, yeah, he was one of the lucky ones. He got away. Paul did file a report with the police. They told him it was unlikely they would ever find the man. But as it turns out, 6 years later, Paul Onions' testimony would be, vital to getting Ivan Milat convicted. When police searched Ivan's house in southwestern Sydney in connection with Paul Onions' robbery, they found belongings to all 6 of his victims. There's also more belongings found at one of his brother's houses. But that brother never served time on these murders. Ivan was arrested in 1994, convicted in 1996 after an 18-week trial. Following a failed escape attempt, this guy just doesn't give up. In his first year behind bars, Milat was sent to maximum security prison in Goulburn. home to Australia's most dangerous criminals. In May, he was transferred to Long Bay in Sydney after he was diagnosed with terminal esophagus and stomach cancer. During this time in solitary confinement at Goulburn, much of his time was spent trying to appeal his convictions, to draw attention to himself. He did things like hunger strikes. He literally swallowed razor blades, staples. He cut off his pinky finger. Yeah, not too mentally unstable. So while he was in prison, his family members basically split on whether he was really guilty. His great nephew, Mathew Muleman, believed he was guilty. So in 2007, when Mathew Muleman was 14, he changed his name to Mathew Milat. Milat was his mom's maiden name, so Muleman was his stepfather's name. Though Mathew was just a little guy when Ivan was in jail, a friend said that he would brag about his great uncle. Then Mathew took things further. In November 2010, Mathew Milat, who was 17 at the time, and his friend Cohen Klein invited their other friend, David Achteloni, out to celebrate his birthday. But instead of smoking pot, as they said they planned to do, Mathew tormented and then killed David with a double-sided axe. Well, Klein recorded the crime on his phone. The scene of the slaying was, of course, Belangelo State Forest. The same place where, Uncle Ivan's victims had been found. All he had to say was, that's what the Milats do. Like, he's a sick little shit. Unreal. In 2012, a 19-year-old Mathew was sentenced to 43 years in prison. He will have to serve 30 before becoming eligible for parole. I don't know. Like I said, I'm in Canada, so I don't know what the laws are like in all these different places. But, I mean, if you're doing this to your buddy, why would you ever get out? I mean, he thought Uncle Ivan was a peach. I don't know. I guess Mathew's crime didn't even please Ivan. After speaking with Ivan about his great-nephew, Ivan was shocked and dismayed by Mathew's crime. Well, Ivan Milat always claimed to be innocent, right? He wouldn't boast about having another killer in the family. Yeah. Ivan Milat was diagnosed with terminal cancer in May of 2019, and yes, his illness progressed. Police tried to get him to confess to the murders he was convicted of, but up until his death, October 27th, at the age of 74, he had still maintained his innocence. The interview was quite interesting to watch, as Ivan kept falling asleep or was pretending to fall asleep. The law enforcement are kind of poking him with stuff, and nurses kind of like, you alive there? You okay over there? It's just like, oh my goodness, yeah. So yeah, they tried to talk to him. He just had a nap. So many people linked to the backpack murders held out little hope that Ivan Milat would tell more about his crimes before his death. But you know what? Ivan's record and convictions speak for themselves. 7 counts of murder, 1 account attempted murder, 1 count false imprisonment, 1 count robbery, criminal penalty, 7 life sentences without parole, 6 years imprisonment, attempted murder, 6 years imprisonment, false imprisonment, 6 years imprisonment for robbery. And as we know, he liked his weapons. At the time of his arrest, he had a .22 caliber Ruger and a 10/22 Bowie knife. Oh my goodness. So, yeah, although he never confessed, I've read, seen that he told his mother, Margaret, they were close. So not long before her death in 2001, he supposedly admitted to her what he had done. In May of 2015, Boris told Steve Patrion, a former homicide detective who serves as a consultant for the Los Angeles Police Department and the FBI, that Ivan admitted responsibility for another shooting, that of a taxi driver, Neville Knight, in 1962, after conducting polygraph tests with Boris Milat and Alan Dillon, the man convicted of the shooting. Patrion was convinced that Milat shot Knight. So yeah, I don't even know what else I can say. I'm probably not going to say much more about this guy. He is, major piece of crap. He does have a daughter, as we know. I know she's written a book. I've not read that. And when Ivan met his daughter's mom, she was 16. So he had a couple other issues going on as well. She left him because he was beating her up, and they divorced in October 1989. So yeah, that's Ivan Milat. I mean, never admitted a damn thing for 40-some years, just, yeah. And if the family knows anything, they've kept it quiet. If that other brother has anything to do with any of that back then I don't know. He got away with something, didn't he? But yeah, I just want to say rest in peace to all of those young men and women. They were going on an adventure of a lifetime in what is one of our safest countries. And they ran into one of the most evil men we've ever known. So, may they rest in peace, never be forgotten. And may Ivan Milat, I guess, burn in hell for as long as eternity lasts. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about that. So, for now, friends, I'm going to say once again, thank you ever so much for spending this time with me. I appreciate you more than you're aware of. On your way out, if you could hit that subscribe, like, and share, it would appreciate it, and it would help me out tons. So, for now, I'll say cheers, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.